I was already running late. My flight from Lagos had landed 40 minutes behind schedule, and by the time I grabbed my carry-on and cleared customs at Jeju International, my phone was flooded with voice notes from Minjung asking where I was. I didn't reply to any of them. That was the whole point. This was a surprise visit. 3 years since we'd been in the same room. 3 years of video calls and care packages and crying over time zones. I needed to see my best friend with my own eyes. I took a cab straight to her apartment building, a beautiful white block sitting on a hill overlooking the sea. I remember thinking, she made it. My girl actually made it. I pressed the buzzer and waited. No answer. I pressed again. Still nothing. I tried calling her, straight to voicemail. I laughed to myself, figuring she'd stepped out. She had left a spare key with her neighbor, Mr. Park, for emergencies. I knocked on his door, explained who I was, and the old man smiled like he'd been expecting me, handed over the key without question. I let myself in. The apartment smelled like her. Jasmine diffuser, coconut shea butter, a faint trace of the agusi soup she must have made recently. I smiled, kicked off my shoes, and dragged my suitcase to the corner. I was going to make tea, sit on her couch, and wait. It was going to be perfect. Then I turned around. And I stopped breathing. There on the wall above her TV unit, large, framed, beautifully lit, was a wedding photograph. And in that photograph was my husband's face. Not similar. Not a look-alike. His face. Kwon Jae-won's face. The same sharp jaw, the same slightly crooked left eye, the same small scar on his chin from a childhood fall he had told me about on our third date. He was wearing a traditional white Korean hanbok, and beside him, radiant in a pink and gold jeogori, was Minjung. My best friend. My best friend was in a wedding photo with my husband. I think I made a sound, something between a gasp and a laugh because my brain refused to process what my eyes were seeing. I walked closer. My hands were shaking as I reached out and touched the frame. The photo was real. The frame was real. The date printed in small gold font at the bottom right corner was real, and it was 3 years before Jae-won and I even met. I pulled out my phone and took a picture of it. Then I sat down on Minjung's couch, in Minjung's living room, surrounded by the smell of Minjung's jasmine diffuser, and I stared at the ceiling for a very long time. If you're new here, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a story. Drop a comment below. What would you do if you walked into your best friend's house and found this? When Minjung came through the door 20 minutes later, arms full of grocery bags and laughing at something on her phone, she found me sitting there in the dark. I hadn't turned on a light. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me wanted the advantage of shadows. Ada. She screamed my name and dropped the bags. Bottles rolled across the floor. She crossed the room and threw her arms around me so hard I nearly fell off the couch. Oh my God, you crazy woman. You didn't tell me. I was going to pick you up. Why didn't you tell me? She was shaking with excitement. Genuine excitement. Real tears in her eyes. I hugged her back. I don't know how. My arms just moved on their own because my brain was still standing in front of that photograph. I wanted to surprise you, I said. My voice sounded normal. I don't know how that was possible either. We Saturday. She made tea. She talked about the grocery run, about a new restaurant she wanted to take me to, about her mother-in-law's latest drama. I nodded. I sipped. I watched her face, the face I had known since university, the face I had cried with and laughed with and called at 2 a.m. during every crisis of my adult life, and I tried to find the lie in it. I couldn't. About an hour in, I couldn't take it anymore. Minjung, I said, and something in my voice made her stop mid-sentence. Who is your husband? She blinked. What do you mean? I mean, what is his name? His full name. She put her mug down slowly. Ada, are you okay? It's Jaehyun. Kwon Jaehyun. You know this. I've told you. Kwon. My stomach dropped through the floor. His surname is Kwon. Yes. She frowned. Ada, you're scaring me. What's going on? I stood up and walked to the photograph. I pointed at the man in the hanbok. Is this him? This is Jaehyun. Yes. Our wedding, 4 years ago. Ada, why are you? My husband's name is Kwon Jae-won. The room went very, very quiet. Minjung stood up slowly. She looked at the photograph. She looked at me. I watched the color drain from her face in real time. What did you say? Kwon Jae-won. My husband. The man I have been married to for 2 years. His surname is Kwon. And he looks, my voice broke, just slightly, just enough, he looks exactly like the man in that photograph. Minjung walked to the photograph and stood beside me. We both stared at it together. Her husband's face. My husband's face. The same face. Neither of us spoke for what felt like 10 minutes. I kept waiting for her to say something that would explain it all away, a cousin, maybe, or some strange coincidence of features. But Minjung just stood there beside me with her hand pressed over her mouth, and I knew from the look in her eyes that she was as lost as I was. They can't be the same person, she finally whispered. Jae-hyun is here. He's been here. We live here. I know, I said. I know Jae-won is in Lagos. He called me this morning. He was at home. But Minjung, I pulled up a photo of my husband on my phone. A candid from his last birthday, laughing at something off camera. I held it up next to the framed wedding photo. Minjung made a sound I will never forget. A small, broken sound, like something inside her cracked. Because there was no denying it. Same jaw. Same eyes. Same scar. Same hands. 2 men who looked so identical that if you swapped their photos in a frame, neither of us would have noticed. That's not possible, she said. But she didn't sound convinced. Has Jae-hyun ever talked about a brother? I asked. She turned to look at me. He's an only child. He was adopted. He doesn't know much about his biological family, he said the records were lost. And Jae-won told me he had no siblings. I sat back down on the couch. My legs had stopped working properly. His parents are both gone. He said there was nothing left of his family. We stared at each other. They could be twins, I said. Ada. Minjung. Look at them. Look at the photo and look at my phone. Tell me that is not the same face. She looked. She looked for a long time. And then she sat down beside me and started to cry. I want you to understand something, I didn't feel anger in that moment. I know that sounds strange. Every part of me should have been furious, or frightened, or ready to start making phone calls and burning things down. But sitting next to Minjung, watching her cry, I felt the strangest thing. I felt like we were both victims of something much older and much larger than either of us. This wasn't betrayal. This was a secret. A buried, decades-old secret that had somehow grown legs and walked right into both our lives. We need to find out the truth, I said. Minjung nodded, wiping her eyes. We need to talk to them. Not yet. I held her arm. Not yet. I need to know first. Before we say anything to either of them, I need to know what actually happened. Like and subscribe if you're still with me, because we are just getting to the part that changes everything. Over the next 3 days, Minjung and I became investigators. She pulled out every document Jae-hyun had ever shared with her about his adoption, a thin folder he kept in the bottom drawer of his desk. The paperwork was sparse. An adoption certificate from a Jeju agency. A single page of medical history. A translated birth record that listed his birth name, his birth city, and then stopped. No parents named. No siblings mentioned. The biological family section was blank. I called in favors from a university friend who worked in medical records in Seoul. I gave him the birth city, the approximate birth year, the surname Kwon. I told him I was looking for twin births, any anomalies, any records that might have been flagged. He called me back 18 hours later. Ada, he said carefully, I found something. But you need to be prepared. He had located a hospital logbook, the kind that predated full digital records, handwritten entries from a maternity ward in a small hospital outside Seoul. The year matched. The surname matched. And the entry read, twin male births. One discharged with family. One transferred to Jeju adoption services at 48 hours old. One kept. One given away. I sat on Minjung's bathroom floor and read that entry 4 times. Minjung stood in the doorway watching my face. What does it say? I looked up at her. Jaewon and Jaehyun are brothers. They're twins. They were separated at birth. She slid down the doorframe until she was sitting on the floor beside me. Their parents split them up. One parent. I think. I kept reading. The mother's name isn't here, but there's a note. A transfer authorization. Signed by the father. He gave one of them away. He gave Jaehyun away. Kept Jaewon. And told both boys they were only children. The silence between us was so heavy I could feel it pressing on my chest. They've lived their whole lives not knowing each other existed, Minjung whispered. And somehow I shook my head, still unable to believe it. Somehow, the two women who loved them became best friends. Without knowing. Without any of us knowing. Minjung reached over and grabbed my hand. We sat on her bathroom floor, two women married to twin brothers, holding hands and trying to breathe. We have to tell them, she said. I know. How do we even? She stopped. How do you tell a man that his father gave his twin brother away and never said a word? I didn't have an answer for that. I just squeezed her hand tighter. But before we could figure out how to tell them, something happened that forced our hand. Jaewon called me. It was late. Minjung had gone to bed. I was on the couch wrapped in a blanket staring at the ceiling when my phone lit up with his name. I almost didn't answer. But I did. Hey, I said. Hey. His voice was warm, familiar, a little tired. You okay? You've sounded strange the last few days. I'm fine. Just tired from the trip. A pause. Ada. Something's going on. I can hear it. This is the man who knows me. Who can hear my heartbeat change through a phone line. Who brought me soup when I was sick and held my hand through every hard thing. I had been lying to him for 3 days by omission, and he heard it anyway. I looked at the wedding photograph on Minjung's wall. My voice came out steadier than I expected. Jaewon, I said. I need to ask you something and I need you to be completely honest with me. Okay. Did you have a brother? The silence on the other end lasted so long I thought the call had dropped. Jaewon. Why are you asking me that? His voice had changed completely. All the warmth was gone, replaced by something careful and guarded and afraid. Because I think you did. I think you do. And I think you need to know that I'm sitting in your brother's house right now. He didn't speak for so long that I pulled the phone from my ear to check the call was still connected. It was. I could hear him breathing, shallow, quick breaths, the way he sounds when he's trying not to show that something has hit him hard. Say that again, he finally said. I'm in Jeju. At Minjung's apartment. And her husband looks exactly like you, Jaewon. Exactly. Same face, same scar, same everything. I found his birth records. You were both born in the same hospital, same year, same night. One of you was kept. One of you was given away. Another silence. Then, very quietly, my father told me my mother lost a pregnancy before I was born. That there was a twin who didn't survive. He lied to you. I heard Jaewon exhale. A long, shaking breath that carried 35 years of a grief he had never even known he was allowed to feel. He's alive, he whispered. He's alive. He's been living 40 minutes flight from where I grew up. And his wife, my voice broke. Just a little, his wife is my best friend. What happened next was chaos, beautiful and terrible all at once. Jaewon booked a flight to Jeju before we even got off the phone. Minjung woke up when she heard me crying and held me while I told her everything. She called Jaehyun, who was on a work trip in Seoul, and told him to come home immediately, that there was something she couldn't explain over the phone but that he needed to hear in person. The 4 of us met at Minjung's apartment the following evening. I will never, for as long as I live, forget what happened when Jaewon walked through that door. Jaehyun was already seated on the couch, arms crossed, still not fully understanding why his wife had summoned him home with tears in her voice. Minjung stood in the kitchen, her hand pressed to her chest. I stood near the window. And then the door opened. Jaewon stepped in. Jaehyun looked up. And the world stopped. I watched 2 men look at each other for the very first time. 2 men with the same face, the same hands, the same scar, staring at a mirror that breathed and blinked and stared back. Jae-hyun shot to his feet so fast the coffee table shook. Jae-won went completely still in the doorway. Nobody spoke. Minjung was crying already. I realized I was too. It was Jae-hyun who moved first. He crossed the room slowly, the way you approach something precious and fragile that you're afraid might disappear. He stood in front of Jae-won and reached up and touched the scar on his chin, the same scar on his own chin, with 2 fingers. "I was told you died," Jae-won said. His voice cracked on the last word. "I was told I didn't have a brother," Jae-hyun replied. Then they held each other. Right there in Minjung's doorway, 2 grown men, strangers who shared a face and a bloodline and a stolen childhood, they just held each other. No words. Just that. Minjung walked over to me and tucked herself under my arm. We watched them and we didn't say anything either because there was nothing to say that would add to what was already in that room. If this story has moved you, please subscribe, hit the like button, and drop a comment. Let me know, what do you think the fathers owed these brothers? The reckoning with the fathers came next, and it was not gentle. Jae-won's father had passed away 5 years earlier. That door was closed. But Jae-hyun's adoptive family, the people who had taken him from that Jeju agency, were still alive. And they had known. Not everything, but enough. Enough to know that the adoption had not been clean. Enough to have questions they had chosen not to ask. When Minjung and Jae-hyun confronted them, his adoptive mother sat at her kitchen table and wept into her hands. She told them she had kept something for 35 years. She got up, went to her bedroom, and came back holding a photograph in a plain white envelope. She set it on the table. In the photograph, small, faded, the edges soft with age, was a young woman sitting in a hospital bed. She looked exhausted and overwhelmed and heartbreakingly young. In her arms, she was holding 2 babies. She was looking at the camera with an expression that I can only describe as someone trying to memorize every detail of a moment they know they will not get to keep. On the back, written in both Yoruba and Korean, because she was a young Nigerian woman studying abroad who had fallen in love with a Korean man who was not ready to be a father, were the words, "My heart goes with you both." Her name was Funmi. She was from Ibadan. She had been 22 years old. And she had not given one of her sons away. She had been told he would be looked after temporarily while she recovered. She had gone home to Nigeria weeks later to discover the adoption had been finalized without her knowledge or consent, processed through paperwork that bore a signature she swore was not hers. She had spent 35 years believing her son was in Korea, alive, but lost to her. She had never stopped looking. When Jae-won and Jae-hyun found her, and they found her, it took 4 months and 2 private investigators and a DNA database, but they found her, living in Ibadan. A retired schoolteacher with photographs of 2 babies on her bedroom wall. She opened her front door and looked at 2 tall men with her eyes and her jaw and her stubborn chin, and she sat down on her own front step because her legs would not hold her. "I looked for you," she kept saying. "I never stopped. I looked for you. I was there." Minjung and I had flown in together, our husbands' hands locked in ours. I watched Jae-hyun kneel down in front of the woman who had never been given the chance to be his mother, and I watched Jae-won cover his face with his hands, and I thought about how one man's cowardice, one father's decision on one terrible night, had fractured 3 lives across 2 continents for 35 years. And I thought about how it had taken 2 women, a spare key, and a wedding photograph on a wall to finally bring them home. The story I thought I walked into that afternoon, a betrayal, a husband, a best friend, a secret, it turned out to be something else entirely. It was a reunion waiting to happen. A family that had been scattered, not broken. Threads that had never actually snapped, just stretched across oceans until someone finally pulled them back together. Minjung and I still talk about that afternoon sometimes. The afternoon I walked into her apartment, saw that photograph, and felt my whole world tilt. We talk about how close we came to destroying something, to calling lawyers and screaming accusations and burning the friendship to the ground, before we stopped and chose to ask a different question. Not who betrayed me, but what is actually happening here? That question changed everything. If you made it to the end of this story, you are exactly the kind of person this channel exists for. Please subscribe, share this with someone who loves a good story, and leave a comment telling me the moment that hit you hardest. Was it the photograph? The brothers at the door? or fun me on her front step. I'll see you in the next one. And trust me, you don't want to miss it.